Hello, everyone. My name is Jos, and I'm here to present Coplay today. More specifically, how you can use Coplay as an AI copilot inside of Unity. But before I begin, I've been asked to just remind everyone to please switch off any noise-making devices and turn your phones to silent mode. Cool. So this presentation will be about how to use AI to speed up your game creation, but also the maintenance of your game, specifically inside Unity. So essentially showing you how to make some games or scenes or interactions like these inside Unity using only chat. A quick summary of what I'm going to cover today. So I'll start with a brief overview of Coplay, showing you all the different UI elements. We're going to be seeing a lot of that today. After that, I'll actually dive into one of these games. And during the creation of this game, we'll cover four key concepts. The first is level generation. The second is manipulating the hierarchy and inspector inside Unity, all via LLMs. C there is tab completion. So if you're familiar with cursor, we have something like that for inside Unity as well. And then the last one being UI generation. I know at least a lot of our customers complain the most about UI inside Unity, so I think that's a favorite among our customers. And then lastly, I'll go over how you can do something that we call one-shot AI pipelines. And for a lot of you who have existing games, if you need to do something like live ops, this is a way to essentially record one of your pipelines once and have AI repeat that indefinitely for all the new assets. But I'll dive into more detail later on. OK, so just before I dive into the details, a lot of the work I'm presenting here could not have been done without my co-founders. The three of us have been working hard on this for the last six, 7 months. Before that, we built over 30 different games in Unity over the preceding 4 years. And we've been working together for quite a while. We all met at Cambridge University while studying there. OK, so for those of you, I assume almost everyone, who are familiar with game dev, you spend about half of your time inside a code editor, so editing code. And the other half is typically spent inside an engine, whether that's Unreal, Unity, Godot, pick your favorite. And now the problem that we've noticed with the game engines is that unlike sort of the joy of coding, game engines have a lot of manual, tedious tasks that you sort of need to complete via dragging and clicking. And beyond that, it's also deeply nested. So you can see on the screenshot here, there's a lot of different stuff. And to change one collider or one setting, you have to typically navigate pretty far down the stack. And this can be really difficult for newcomers to Unity, so it makes it hard to learn. And then for senior devs, it's really hard to do things quickly because you have to do all of this tedious tasks. And that's where Coplay comes into play. So we've built a chat interface that can control Unity for you. So this enables you to do a lot of tasks in bulk. And also, if you don't even know where to find that setting, it'll do it for you because it has context of your entire project. So Coplay is based on an MCP interface, and we really focus on doing tasks for you inside of Unity. So on this screenshot, looks a bit small up there, sorry, but on the right-hand side, you can see the Coplay interface. Everything on the left, so the scene view, the hierarchy, that's what you normally see in Unity for those who haven't used Unity before. But everything in this right panel is Coplay. So in the top here, can you see my cursor? Yeah. We have tick marks that are green. This basically shows executed action. So again, I'm just talking through this to show you what you're going to be seeing a lot of in the coming video. The red icon or the red X is basically an execution that failed. And the nice thing here is we feed that back into the model so it can self-correct. Then down here, we have unexecuted actions. So I'll pause there or do a quick side tour. The thing we learned early on with our users is that we couldn't just execute actions in their project bluntly because the AI might make some things you don't want to change, and then it messes up the whole project. So instead, we show them all of these actions that the model wants to take, and the user can then go and either cancel them or execute the action by clicking on it. And then at the bottom here, we have a run all if they agree to all of the actions. And at the bottom here, you have your sort of typical AI chat interface, chat input submission area. Cool. A couple of other things. So if you're familiar with Cursor or any of your favorite sort of AI copilot tools, We're also model agnostic, so you can pick any of your favorite models to work inside of Unity. We've also fine-tuned a Coplay premium model. So this one is specifically better for sort of more ambiguous or bigger planning tasks, such as like make me a game like Mario. That's typically not broken down into enough steps, but this model will do it for you. Then the second part that you can also sort of tweak here is we've got special assistants for very specific stuff. So normal mode is as it says. The one-shot mode you can see here is the model will actually try to make the changes you're trying to do in one shot by generating an editor script. The scene generation and UI generation are specific models that are really good at taking existing assets or making new assets and putting that all into a level for you, or actually generating UI inside Unity. And then finally, we have beast mode. And beast mode takes all of those other assistants into account, and the model will actually just decide for you which one is best to use at this point in time. OK, and then I think this is the last slide before we go into demo. So because all of this lives inside of Unity, we have full context of your entire project. So it's not only the sort of the scripts that it reads, but it can have visual understanding of the models that you have in your project, what your scene looks like. And then you can see here in the GIF, you can just drag and drop context if you want to specifically focus on that for your next execution. You can drag and drop from the scene, from your project, and you can actually also pick, do you want, for example, to focus on the project settings or packages, etc. OK, so that was a quick overview of Coplay. Next, I'll jump into a video of how to make a game or a scene like this one. Let me see if I can go. OK, so this will be a sort of a video showing everything, and it's sped up quite a bit. So I'll sort of play and pause and describe things as we go along. But we're starting with a fresh project, and you can see Coplay on the right-hand side is clear. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'll quickly drag and drop a bunch of, let me quickly pause there. One thing Coplay can do for you, so we integrate with all of your favorite sort of 3D generation tools or APIs. So you can pick like Meshy or Tripio to generate any models for you and have it imported straight into Unity from their API. But we still think that real artists actually make better art. So for this demo, I've sort of downloaded a couple of packages from the Unity Asset Store with really good art that we like to then just make the scene for us. So what I'm doing here is I've taken those downloaded assets, and I'm just adding them to context. And then I pick the model, and I tell it, I want to create a game in which you drive around in a desert-like environment and kill zombies by running over them with your car. And I ask it to generate a scene. And this is in beast mode. Cool, let me pause there. So what beast mode did here is it enhanced the prompt. So it realized, OK, this is sort of what we want to do. It'll make a more specific, detailed prompt about how to create the scene. You can see the number 3 below that, and that's the number of iterations that this will run for. The model also decides that for you, but I'm actually going to override that and pick 5, because I wanted, basically, the number of iterations, the more complex the scene will be. And we can also pick which model we want to use for generating the scene. But cool, there I hit generate, and in the bottom right, you can see the progress bar for the scene busy generating. All right, so we've generated that scene, but one thing you might have noticed is that it didn't have a ground floor, so I'm just asking the model, OK, can you add a ground floor to this as well and make it look like a desert floor? And I'll just pause there again. So you can see on the right-hand side here, there's a couple of actions, again, that the model outputs, and I've just executed all of them. And let's see what happens. OK. One of the things I also noticed is that some of the rocks that were added to the scene, so these are the rock models, didn't have their, you can see it there, they didn't have their textures. Some of them do, some of them don't. And here I'm just asking the model, like, hey, can you assign textures or materials to all of them? And this Coplay's thinking is the model status. But one thing I'll scroll back to there. A fun fact here for people in the crowd using Coplay already, we've noticed that models like GPT-4o are pretty good at doing large sort of batch processes. So you can see here it outputted like a lot of actions, all basically assigning materials to all of them in one go. The other models like Grok 3 or Claude 3.7 are actually, they're slightly more accurate or specific, but they would mainly default to executing one action at a time, but be really specific. So for this one, I knew I needed just a big batch thing, and I picked GPT-4o for that. But cool, if I hit execute and all of that, you can see all of the textures are now assigned. So yeah, just quickly pausing there. That's one of the, a good example of a tedious task that you have to do inside the hierarchy and inspector to basically go through each of those and assign the right texture or material. Cool. So next up, I just sort of modify what context I want, pick Grok 3, and oh yeah, one thing I realized was that the scene that the model generated was a bit cramped. And here I'm just asking it like, cool, can we double the space between the rocks and the zombies? But then for all the other objects for which that would not be logical, like the road or the fences, let's keep them together. And again, just running that. Because it's Grok 3, as I mentioned here, it goes through each of them one by one. And I'm running it in YOLO mode, so it just sort of continues executing each action as it goes along. One thing that's pretty nice here that you can see highlighted on the hierarchy and inspector is we actually we zoom into the object that you just edited, and we'll actually also highlight what edit we've just made, just so you can see as the model executes actions, what changes are being made. I wanted to add more rocks to the scene, didn't feel like there was enough, so I asked it to duplicate all of them and just move them further away from the center than the current ones. And again, GPT-4o doing some bulk actions for us. And I think the next one is to double the size of the rocks. Yes. So I thought they were a bit small and just want them to take all of the rocks and double the size. Cool. Again, a lot of bulk actions here, just very quickly executed for us. And one other thing I wasn't super happy with was the scene generator put, you can see these the blocky cars in the middle of the road as placeholders, sort of like gray boxing it for us. But I found a really cool Rusty car package on the Unity Asset Store, and I wanted it to replace the sort of block out cars with the real ones. And yeah, Coplay just goes through all of that and puts the Rusty cars for us in the right place. And again, I just added that to context. It knows where to find them, the size, their orientation, etc. Okay, so that was a quick overview of basically the scene generation setup. The quick side road I want to go down here is I'll show you an example of the tab complete. So something you have to do quite often in some of your games is you have to rename stuff or change where they're parented or delete objects. And what Coplay does in the background is it's always sort of listening to the actions you're taking and then making predictions on what's the most likely next action you should take given sort of the knowledge it has of game creation. And in this example, we can see this cactus or cacti here are all different cylinders. And I just want to rename it as an example to cactus 1, cactus 2, cactus 3. So this first one, I'll type in cactus 1. And now what Coplay sort of has done in the background is predicted the next action, which is probably going to be to rename cactus 2. And as I hit tab, I can just complete all of these as long as the model predicts that there is a next action to take. And yeah, I'll just hit tab to complete all of those. Cool. So as I mentioned, that was sort of the scene setup. The next big thing you want to do when you create a game is now you want to actually add logic. So I have, if you look in the bottom left, there's this blue car, again, an asset downloaded from the store. And I've added this car to context because this is the car I want to have in my scene. But now I want to ask the model to add logic to spawn this car in the game. Let me control it with WASD. And I want a camera to follow the car. So Coplay automatically sort of knows which actions to take. So has to add the asset to the scene, create the right scripts. So in this case would be the car controller and a camera following script. It generates those for me. And then it adds the right components to the different objects it needs to, adds the scripts to the right parts. And voila, when we play this game, we have a car that we can control. Now, one thing I noticed, well, it was a bit quick maybe there, but the car was a bit jittery. So in this next prompt, I just ask it hey, it jitters as it moves. How can we smooth the motion? And it modifies the script for us. And voila. Now when we drive, it's a bit smoother. But you can see that I'm still driving through the rocks. So One thing we haven't done yet is add colliders to all of the rocks. And that's, yeah, again, a lot of objects. So we do this with GPT-4o. And cool, it's just in sort of one click, added a bunch of colliders to all of the rocks in our scene. Okay. And one thing I also noticed was that it was a bit bland to just drive the car around, and I wanted to have some dust particle effects coming out of the car as it drives. So this is actually one thing I have no idea how to do, but the model pretty much got there by itself. It adds the objects to the wheels. It adds a, what is that? Basically like a particle effect to each of them. And this guy called me during this whole thing, so I But yeah, as you can see there, there's a little dust particle, which it wasn't like, it's not too obvious, but it was good enough for this demo for me, so I left it there. And okay, now that was sort of the setup of our car and our first person, or yeah, third person play mode. But now I actually want to add some fun, which is like, hey, let's add 20 zombies to the map. I'll pause here because there's a lot to take in. After the zombie spawns, they should walk toward wherever the car is at that time. If I hit a zombie with my car, the zombie should die. And when a zombie dies, it should respawn at a random new location. Again, so a lot of stuff for the model to take in here. It generates sort of these manager and controller scripts for the zombies. Oh, this is actually a very interesting one that I'll scroll back on. So one of the things it wants to do to like have these zombies walk around in the scene is use the what I can see there, the nav mesh surface. It's in the bottom right. But what it does here is it tries to add that component and it fails, and it realizes from our like sort of project context that this package doesn't exist. So it's actually going ahead and installing this Unity package for us. So you can see it in the progress bar. And now that it's installed it reuses that component and adds the nav mesh surface. And it adds all of the different components needed for the zombie mode to work. And the scripts. Cool, and as we play, we can see we've got some zombies in the scene and we can bump them. But for anyone else watching, like the one thing I really love in some games is when something just randomly ragdolls. So I was like, cool, the zombies were a bit high, so how can we make them be under the influence of gravity, and how can we make them ragdoll when I hit them? Okay, and again, Coplay goes ahead, does what it thinks is best. And the model I'm using here is 3.7. I think it actually modified one script there. Yeah. Cool. And now when we bump the zombies, they rotate around. This isn't obviously not perfect ragdolling at all, but for me it was fun enough to sort of just push them around. Okay, cool. So that was, yeah, let me just pause there. That was basically the like very basic game setup and scene setup. The next thing that a lot of people really don't like to do is like setting up the UI here for the game. So I've switched to the UI assistant mode in the bottom right. Again, sorry, it's a bit small. So one thing you can do with the UI is you can actually just prompt it to generate any sort of gray box UI for you. You can then go one step further and define a style. So if you have pre-made button assets or panels or any art really that you want to use, you can import that, and whenever you prompt it to make UI, it'll use that style for you. But I'm going to go one step further, and you can actually, instead of doing that, say you have a design file like this one, you can add that to context and ask the model to just recreate UI that looks like this. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I ask, create UI similar to the image, but I want a few changes. So for example, one is I want the headline to read the number of zombies that I've killed, and I want a play button in the center, and then the car in that image was red, but I've got a blue car, so I wanted it to make a blue car. So cool. Its first attempt was pretty good. I've got a blue car, I've got a button in the center, but the text is a bit misaligned, so that's another thing Coplay can do for you. It can just change the layout via text. So I ask it to put the number above the play button, and there we go. So we've got decent-ish UI, not the best, but good enough for this example. But this is only the sort of the visuals of the UI. Now we need to add logic to that as well. And I've switched back to normal mode here. asking it to add logic that'll basically show this menu at the start of my game, because currently if I play, it'll show you what I've shown you before. When I click play, start the game, then I also want to, when I press spacebar during gameplay, I want it to show this menu again. And all the while, it should record the number of zombies that I kill while playing. So it adds a UI manager for us, and I think it's going to assign it, yes, to the right components. And it makes some mistakes, self-correct itself. And here we go. So when we hit play, the game starts. We can see the menu at the start there. I can hit my zombies again. And I think at some point here, I'll hit pause, which will show you the count. Yeah, so killed 8 zombies. You can play again, and you can carry on and kill more zombies. But yeah, that's the gist of this game. So let me go back to the slides here. OK, so that was a quick example of how you go from 0 to 1 with this simple sort of mock-up game inside Unity. But what if you have a large existing game and you have to do some maintenance, or you have to do some live ops where, for example, you're adding more assets or more weapons to your game? And that's another place where Coplay shines as well. And that's what I'm going to be showing you here. So let me go into the next video. OK, so this game here is actually one of the games we worked on before. It's got about 1.5 million players. It's a VR game. It's a big game. So it's got like I think about 20,000 different assets, 40,000 different files. So a lot of things that you need to keep in context. And sorry, I haven't explained this yet, but for anyone who's not aware, when I say context, it's sort of all the text and the knowledge that the LLM sees before it takes action. So that's roughly what I mean by context. But yeah, so in this game, a lot of stuff to do. And what we needed to do here every 2 weeks or so was add new weapons that our team had prepared. But to add those weapons, you had to go through a lot of different sort of manual steps inside Unity to get it into the actual game. So what I'll do at the start here, so what I quickly did there is Coplay has this record mode, and you can just hit the record button that I showed there. And I'll go through the different steps here. So the first one is create a prefab variant. And yeah, sorry, just pausing there quickly, but I'll go through the manual steps that I've done here to do one of the weapons. The weapon I'm doing is the banjo. But then after that, I'll show you how you can automate it with Coplay. So we just created a prefab variant. And on the right-hand side in the top here, you can see that Coplay showed you, cool, I've recorded this action, creating a prefab with that path. And if we continue playing, the next thing we want to do is actually add a mesh to that prefab. So again, it recorded the action. The next thing we want to do is we want to add this like weapon view component to the prefab. And there we drag and drop a bunch of different handlers, very tedious and repetitive. Now, once we've done that, we actually have to set up this item in the config, name it, drag and drop the icon across when I find that. Cool, got it. And now we have to actually attach the prefabs to this config as well. So this is a scriptable object. And cool, I just paused or stopped the recording there, and I can name it whatever I want, weapon pipeline. And that's that. So I quickly add a bunch of the items that I'm pretty sure this model will need for context, just to be more specific. And now I can ask it, repeat the weapon pipeline for the fork and the katana, which are 2 new weapons that's not in the project yet. And let's run that. So cool, you can see first action here is already correct, which is create the prefab variant for the fork and the katana. So yeah, maybe taking one step back there, the model sort of sees the general flow of what this pipeline is that you did before, but now it knows that, it needs to look specifically for like the fork assets and the katana assets in your project and execute the same flow, but for new items. Cool, and it runs that. It needs to add the meshes next, which you can see it did here. Then it needs to basically follow all of the other steps that it did. Set the properties. So you can see there on the left, it started to add the component and setting the different properties of that component. And here I'll just run through the rest of them, which are mainly editing the config. Cool. I think, It's almost done. Yeah, there we go. So I'll pause there. You can see at the bottom here, it's added the 2 new items, the fork and the katana. I'm not 100% sure where my banjo went, but... And then you can see here the fork with its components, with its material, and the same for the katana. And that's all done just by AI, hands-free. And that's the end of the video as well. Cool. So what's sort of the result we get from this? We save devs a lot of time. So specifically with the record and replay, we've seen on average that it gives our developers, our users who have to release something every 2 weeks, it'll save them something like 5 hours every 2 weeks that they don't have to do manually anymore. But yeah, sort of summarizing thoughts here. Coplay makes it really easy to get started in Unity as a newcomer. We're already being used by some of the largest mobile game studios and VR game studios out there. On average, we reduce the time spent in Unity tasks from 30 minutes to 1 minute. And yeah, some nice feedback we've gotten is that it helps the developers prevent RSI with repetitive Unity tasks. So yeah, thanks so much. If you have any questions or would like to try it out, come grab us after or go get us at our booth. Yeah, thanks a bunch, and happy to answer any questions here.
Can you talk a little bit about what's on the roadmap coming up? Because
yeah, good question. So I would say, so just to repeat the question, just talk a little bit about what's on the roadmap. I would say that the biggest things for us right now is we want to get the scene generation to be even better, scene and UI generation. At the moment, it still makes a few mistakes that takes you a couple of reprompts to get it perfect. But that's one of the biggest needs from our large game studio companies. And other than that, we've sort of eked out as much performance as you can with adding the latest Unity docs to all of the context that the model receives. And this is specific to the project you're using. So let's say you're using 2023 Unity. It'll pull docs specifically for that version. But I think the next step for us here to speed things up even further is fine-tune some models on those specific workflows. So yeah, that's the exciting stuff that I think is coming up, and just make it smoother. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, you pretty much answered the scene question I had for you, because the way you did the demo, had the title screen and then immediately took you to the game. So I was just curious how you manage the whole scene integration, various scenes, and how is there like a cleanup process that the UI does for you?
What do you mean by cleanup process?
After you have everything, all of your specific scenes set up, does the UI actually reformat them to work more cohesive? Like when I'm developing, usually from one level to another, sometimes I lose track of that. So does the UI, does it kind of look at those parameters with scene management, or?
Yeah, so that's not something I showed here, but effectively, once you've created the different scenes or levels or UI components separately, you can run sort of another session of prompts to clean that all up. That's what we've seen as workflows before. It's not built in automatic, so you still have to go in and do, or sort of get the model to do that for you. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. But you did mention right now that scene management is or the scene in general is what you're really working on, right? It's one of the big things. Thank you.
How would you recommend striking a balance between using Coplay to increase productivity, but not relying on Coplay for everything in your game?
Yeah, good question. First time I've heard it. So the question is how to balance reliance on Coplay versus still, I guess, learning enough in Unity to get good at it. That's a good question. I would say my sort of gut answer here is when there's processes that you're already familiar with, but you know what to do, you just have to go do it, and it's a lot of work, then use Coplay. If it's something new, try to go learn it yourself first. But there's also the caveat of sort of, if you ask Coplay to do it, it'll highlight where the setting is being changed. So that's a good way to quickly learn how to do it. And then maybe the second step you do it, or the second time you do it. But yeah, so I would say at least what we are seeing with our users, they sort of know what to do. It's the same with Cursor. You know what refactoring you have to go do. Now something just needs to go do it. And that's where Coplay comes into play.
Thank you.
Cool.
Is there any just kind of search supported where, for example, let's say I don't necessarily want to do everything to a certain category of objects, but I actually just want to find that category of objects? Is there a dedicated UI for doing that, or do you have to do kind of a hack where you ask it to do something to that category of objects, and then you just look at the list of things it wants to do, and then decline them?
It's a bit less hacky than what you described. There's no specific mode for it, but if you ask the model sort of a question of like why or how or where, it will return just text. It won't return actual actions. So a lot of our users do use it for that purpose of like, hey, this is a very deeply nested prefab. I don't even know where things are here. Tell me where we like attach the, I don't know, character controller or something like that. Okay. So yeah, it's like also being used as a search tool inside Unity.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, so I noticed you're switching between models throughout the demo. For those who aren't as familiar with the different models and the best uses for them, how are you getting users to like know about that, right? So you're using ChatGPT for batch commands and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, okay, so the question is how do we sort of relay the information about which model is best for which when using Coplay? To be honest, we haven't done any of that yet. This is the first time I've told people like which model is better for which. The first, sort of the highest priority for us was just to get all the models into people's hands because at least with our own use of similar tools like Cursor, you typically, if one model doesn't give you the right answer, you'll just run the next one. So yeah, I think we have a little Discord community where we share best practices. I think we'll start doing this in that group.
Nice, great, thank you.
Cool.
Hi, I might have missed this, but I saw you using context in a lot of your actions for Coplay. Is there a way to integrate context into your own project file structure? Let's say you're building a project that has a lot of assets and you're struggling to just even find them, right? How do you even integrate context so that it can just find it for you and do the action instead of having you to provide context every single time?
Yeah. So great question. So the question is if you have, well, I don't know if I have to repeat all of these. Show me a hand if I don't have to repeat them. Okay. Okay, so to find context, if you have a lot that you're not even sure where to go get it. So the default behavior of Coplay is it can see sort of a high-level overview of your entire project, and when it thinks it needs to go dig deeper, it'll actually do that for you. The reason I add a lot of it manually was to save time, because I know these are here. I'll just add this entire folder. It's somewhere in there. The model will find the right one. So the answer to your question is it'll find it automatically for you. It'll just take a few more steps because it'll say like, oh, cool, I want to go look into this folder and look at those objects. And then it'll do that and extract the information for you. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Move to the wrap-up room for the next question. Thanks.